I don't want some black janitor breathing the same air as my clients.
Craig Dawson said it at full volume. 40th floor boardroom, Charlotte, North Carolina. 5 colleagues standing right behind him. Not one said a word. Benjamin Johnson looked up from his mop, sweat on his forehead.
Sir, I'm almost done. Just give me 1 minute.
Craig stepped forward, got close enough that Benjamin could smell the cologne.
Your kind already got too many minutes in this building. You smell like bleach and poverty.
Benjamin held eye contact for 3 full seconds. Then he picked up his bucket and walked out. But what Craig Dawson didn't know was that the man he just humiliated would soon return, and nothing in that building would ever be the same. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Benjamin Johnson really was. Because the man Craig Dawson saw, the janitor with the mop and the wrinkled uniform, that was only one layer of a much deeper story. Benjamin grew up in a small 2-bedroom house in East Charlotte, raised by his grandmother, Dorothy Johnson, after his mother passed when he was 9. Dorothy worked 2 jobs, morning shift at a laundromat, night shift restocking shelves at a grocery store. She never missed a single parent-teacher conference, never once let Benjamin leave the house without ironing his shirt. She used to tell him the same thing every morning before school. The world is going to look at you and decide who you are before you open your mouth. So when you do open it, make sure they remember. Benjamin listened. He graduated valedictorian from his high school, full scholarship to Howard University, where he earned a dual MBA in finance and corporate strategy. Top of his class. Professors called him one of the sharpest minds they had seen in a decade. He had job offers lined up before graduation, consulting firms, investment banks, all of them fighting over him. Then Dorothy got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came 3 weeks before Benjamin was supposed to start at a top-tier consulting firm in New York. He turned down the job that same day, moved back to Charlotte, spent the next 14 months by her side, driving her to chemotherapy, cooking her meals, reading to her when she was too weak to hold a book. Dorothy passed on a Tuesday morning in March, quietly, holding Benjamin's hand. She left behind no savings. What she left behind was a pile of medical bills that reached 6 figures. Benjamin sold the house. It barely covered half. So when Benjamin took the janitorial position at Pinnacle Dynamics, people assumed he was desperate. And in one way, he was. He needed the paycheck. But desperation wasn't the full story. Not even close. Now let me tell you about Pinnacle Dynamics, because this company was a character in itself. Pinnacle Dynamics was a Fortune-listed management consulting firm headquartered in a 40-story glass tower in uptown Charlotte. The kind of building where the lobby alone cost more than most people's houses. Marble floors, steel elevators, a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. The company handled contracts worth hundreds of millions. Their client list included some of the biggest names in American industry. On paper, Pinnacle Dynamics was elite, polished, untouchable. But underneath that glass surface, the culture told a different story. The executive floors, 38 through 40, were almost entirely white. White managers, white VPs, white directors eating lunch in a private dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The janitorial and maintenance staff? Predominantly black and Latino. They entered the building through the loading dock around back. They used the freight elevator, not the main one. The main elevator had a small sign next to the button, "Authorized personnel only." Janitors were told on their first day that they were not authorized. They had a separate break room in the basement. No windows, 1 microwave, a vending machine that hadn't been restocked in weeks. The fluorescent light above the table flickered every few seconds. Nobody ever fixed it. Nobody upstairs knew their names. Nobody said good morning. They were invisible, and they were meant to be. And then there was Craig Dawson. Craig was the regional manager, mid-40s, slicked back hair, a watch that cost more than Benjamin's annual salary. He didn't earn his position through brilliance. He earned it through politics. He knew whose hand to shake, whose joke to laugh at, whose work to steal credit for. But what Craig was really known for, the thing everybody whispered about but nobody reported, was how he treated people beneath him, especially people of color. One Tuesday morning, a Latino maintenance worker named Alejandro missed a scuff mark near the conference room. Craig walked past, stopped, snapped his fingers and said, "Hey, you missed a spot. What do I need to do? Draw you a map in crayon?" Nobody laughed, but nobody said anything either. That was the culture. Look away, stay quiet, protect your paycheck. And standing beside Craig through every one of these moments, watching, nodding, saying nothing, was Lorraine Hayes, Senior VP Craig's political shield, the woman who signed off on everything he did without ever questioning a single word. That was the world Benjamin Johnson walked into, eyes wide open. Let's go back to that Friday evening, the boardroom on the 40th floor, because what happened after Benjamin walked out? That was just the beginning. Benjamin pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway toward the freight elevator. The wheels squeaked against the marble. The fluorescent lights above him buzzed low and steady. He pressed the elevator button and waited. His reflection stared back at him in the polished steel doors. Gray uniform, damp mop, bucket of dirty water. Behind him, he could still hear Craig's voice echoing through the boardroom, laughing, telling some joke to his colleagues. The sound bounced off the glass walls and carried all the way down the corridor like it was chasing him. Benjamin stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, and for a moment he just stood there, alone, breathing. He didn't slam his fist against the wall. He didn't curse under his breath. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small leather notebook, worn at the edges, the kind you'd buy at a dollar store. He clicked his pen, and he wrote. Date, time, location, what was said, who was present. He had done this before. This wasn't his first entry. That weekend came and went. Benjamin spent Saturday morning at the laundromat 2 blocks from his apartment, folding his uniforms while reading a used copy of Pinnacle Dynamics' annual report. He had pulled it from the recycling bin on the 38th floor the week before, dog-eared the pages on cost structure, made notes in the margins about operational waste, departments overstaffed by 15%, consulting contracts renewed automatically without performance review, a logistics budget that hadn't been audited in 3 years. He wasn't reading it for fun. He was studying. Monday morning, 6 a.m. Benjamin clocked in before anyone on the executive floors had even hit their alarm. He mopped the lobby, wiped down the elevator panels, emptied the trash on floors 35 through 40. By the time the first suit walked through the front door at 8:15, every surface was spotless. Nobody noticed. Nobody was supposed to. Around noon, Benjamin sat in the basement break room. The flickering fluorescent light buzzed above him. The vending machine hummed in the corner. He had a granola bar and a bottle of water, and on the table in front of him, the quarterly earnings report. He was 3 pages deep into the company's revenue breakdown when the basement door opened. Craig Dawson walked in. This was unusual. Managers never came down here. The basement was for storage rooms, utility closets, and the janitorial break room. Craig had no reason to be on this floor, unless he was looking for something. Or someone. Craig spotted Benjamin at the table. His eyes dropped to the report. His expression shifted. The casual arrogance tightened into something colder. "What the hell are you reading?" Benjamin looked up, kept his voice even. "The quarterly earnings report, sir. Found it in the recycling bin on 38. Craig crossed the room in 4 steps. He snatched the report out of Benjamin's hands. The pages crumpled under his grip. "This is confidential company material. You know that?" "With respect, sir, It's the public quarterly report. It's available on the company website. Craig's jaw clenched. He didn't care about the facts. He cared about the visual. A black janitor sitting in the basement, reading financial documents, making notes like he understood them. That image disturbed something in Craig that he couldn't name, but could definitely feel. He leaned down, close. His tie hung inches from the table. Let me make something real clear for you. You clean floors. You empty trash. That's it. You don't read our reports. You don't sit in this room longer than it takes to eat your little lunch. You do your job, and you vanish. Are we clear? Benjamin didn't blink. Crystal. Craig tossed the crumpled report into the trash can by the door. It hit the rim and fell in. He didn't look back. But someone else was watching. Terrence Moore, a black man in his 50s, broad shoulders, security badge clipped to his belt, stood just outside the break room door. He had seen the whole thing. The snatching, the leaning, the tone. He'd worked at Pinnacle Dynamics for 11 years. He had seen Craig do this kind of thing more times than he could count, and every single time, he swallowed it down like everyone else. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was the way Benjamin sat there, composed, unbothered, dignified, while a man twice his salary tried to make him feel small. Maybe it was the look in Benjamin's eyes after Craig left. Not anger, not defeat. Something sharper. Terrence waited until the hallway was clear. Then he stepped inside. Hey, I saw what happened just now. Benjamin looked up. That ain't right. What he did to you in there, that ain't right. And it ain't the first time. Benjamin nodded slowly. I know. You gonna report it? Not yet. Terrence studied him for a moment. Then he gave a single nod. All right, but you keep your head up. And if you ever need a witness, I was here. Benjamin allowed himself a small smile. I appreciate that, Terrence. Terrence walked out. Benjamin sat alone in the flickering light. He pulled the crumpled report out of the trash can, smoothed it flat against the table, and kept reading. 2 days later, the next hit came. Benjamin was called to the HR office on the 22nd floor. A young woman behind the desk, couldn't have been more than 25, slid a piece of paper across the table. Her expression said she didn't want to be doing this. Mr. Johnson, this is a formal written warning. It's been filed by Mr. Dawson. Benjamin picked it up, read it carefully. Every line. The document accused him of unauthorized access to confidential materials. It claimed he had been insubordinate during a direct managerial instruction on the previous Friday evening. It described him as aggressive and stated that he had refused to vacate the executive boardroom when asked. Every single line was either exaggerated or an outright lie. The Friday incident, he had left within seconds. The report he read, it was public information available to anyone. Aggressive? He had said 12 words total. Benjamin set the paper down. This isn't accurate. The HR representative, her name tag read Katie, shifted in her chair. I understand your concern, Mr. Johnson. You're welcome to write a rebuttal statement and we'll attach it to the file, but the warning stands. On whose authority? Katie hesitated. Mr. Dawson is a regional manager. His documentation has been reviewed and approved. By who? Another pause. Ms. Hayes, Senior VP. Lorraine Hayes, of course. Benjamin looked at the paper one more time. A formal, written warning. One more, and he'd be terminated. That was the policy, 2 strikes. And Craig Dawson had just handed him strike 1 based on nothing but fabrication. Katie slid a pen across the desk. I just need your signature acknowledging receipt. It doesn't mean you agree with the content. Benjamin picked up the pen, signed his name. Clean, precise. handed it back. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm sorry. Is there anything else I can help with?" "No. Thank you, Katie." He walked out, down the hallway, into the freight elevator, back to the basement. That night, Benjamin sat at the small desk in his apartment. The desk lamp cast a warm circle of light onto his laptop screen. On one side of the desk, the wrinkled warning letter. On the other, his leather notebook, open to a page filling up fast. He started typing. Not a resignation letter, not a complaint. Something bigger, a timeline. Every incident since his first day at Pinnacle Dynamics, dates, times, exact quotes, names of witnesses, floor numbers, what was said, who was present, who stayed silent. He cross-referenced it with the quarterly report notes he'd been making for weeks, the financial inefficiencies, the culture of silence, the leadership gaps. Everything was connecting. Benjamin Johnson wasn't just surviving a hostile workplace. He was building something, piece by piece, night after night. And nobody, not Craig, not Lorraine, not anyone on those executive floors, had any idea what was coming. Over the next 3 weeks, Craig Dawson didn't back off. He escalated. It started with the reassignment. Benjamin had been cleaning floors 35 through 40 since his first day, the executive levels. It was hard work, but the spaces were well maintained, predictable, manageable. Then, on a Monday morning, he found a new schedule taped to his locker. No explanation, no meeting, just a printed sheet with his name at the top and one word circled in red marker. Basement. He had been reassigned to the basement restrooms. Exclusively. If you've never cleaned a corporate basement restroom, let me paint the picture. These were the bathrooms that nobody on the upper floors even knew existed, used primarily by loading dock workers, delivery drivers, and overnight maintenance staff. The tiles were cracked. The grout had turned a shade of yellow that no amount of scrubbing could fix. One of the toilets ran constantly, a thin stream of water trickling across the floor like a slow leak nobody ever bothered to report. And the smell. That was the first thing that hit you. Not just unpleasant, it sat in the back of your throat. Chemical and damp at the same time. Benjamin showed up at 6 a.m., got on his knees, scrubbed every surface without a word. He did this every morning for 3 straight weeks. Craig signed that reassignment personally. He made sure of it. But the restrooms were just the start. 2 weeks in, Pinnacle Dynamics held a company-wide town hall in the main lobby. Every employee was invited. It was in the email blast, the bulletin board, the internal newsletter. Every employee. Benjamin stood near the back wall, arms folded, listening quietly as the executive team talked about quarterly growth and new client acquisitions. Craig was on stage, mid-sentence about a new contract when his eyes drifted to the back of the room. He spotted Benjamin, stopped talking. Then he leaned into the microphone. "I'm sorry, quick note. This event is for salaried staff. If you're here on a custodial badge, the break room is downstairs. Let's keep this professional." He looked directly at Benjamin when he said it. Didn't use his name. Didn't have to. The room went quiet. A few people turned around. A few others stared at their phones. Nobody spoke up. Benjamin stood there for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked out through the back door. His footsteps echoed in the lobby. The glass doors swung shut behind him. Craig cleared his throat, smiled, and continued his presentation. After that, things got worse in a subtler way. Craig sent an internal memo to department heads suggesting that non-essential staff should not fraternize with consulting team members during business hours. He framed it as a professionalism initiative, but everyone knew what it meant. A young associate on the 36th floor, a guy named Brady who used to say good morning to Benjamin every single day, suddenly stopped. No eye contact, no greeting, Just a quick turn of the head and a fast walk past the cleaning cart. Benjamin noticed. Of course he noticed. But he said nothing. He just kept scrubbing, kept showing up, kept writing in that notebook. And one evening, he did something else. He pulled out his phone, opened the voice recording app, and pressed record. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. Only one person in a conversation needs to know it's being recorded. Benjamin knew. Then came the night that almost broke him. It was a Thursday, just past 7 p.m. Benjamin was changing in the janitorial locker room, a narrow room in the basement with metal lockers, a wooden bench, and a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. He had just pulled on a clean shirt when the door swung open. Craig walked in. Behind him, a building security officer. Not Terrence, a younger guy Benjamin had never seen before. Craig didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He just walked in like he owned the space, which, in his mind, he did. We received an anonymous tip that a member of the custodial staff has been stealing office equipment. I need to search your locker. Benjamin turned slowly, shirt half buttoned. An anonymous tip? From who? That's confidential. Do you have authorization from HR or building management? Craig's eyes narrowed. I'm a regional manager. I am the authorization. Open the locker, now, or I terminate you on the spot. Benjamin held his gaze. Then he reached over and unlatched the locker door. Inside, a clean change of clothes, a granola bar, a copy of Good to Great by Jim Collins, and the leather notebook. Craig reached in, pulled out the clothes, tossed them on the bench, grabbed the book, flipped through it, dropped it on the floor. Then he picked up the notebook. He opened it. His eyes moved across the pages, and then his expression changed. His own name, written over and over, dates beside it, times, quotes, exact quotes, things he had said in the boardroom, in the break room, at the town hall. Every incident, documented, organized. Craig's face went red. He tore out a fistful of pages, folded them, shoved them into his jacket pocket. You've been keeping notes on me? On this company? His voice dropped to something low and sharp. That's grounds for immediate termination. Benjamin's voice was steady. Those are my personal notes. You just destroyed my personal property. And you just conducted an unauthorized search with a fabricated tip. Craig stepped close. Close enough that Benjamin could see the vein pulsing in his temple. You listen to me. You are nothing. You push a mop. You think anyone in this building is going to believe you over me? You're a janitor. I run this floor, and if I want you gone, you're gone. Now clean up this mess. He turned and walked out. The security officer lingered for a moment, looking at the clothes on the floor, the book face down on the concrete, the torn edges of notebook pages scattered on the bench. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Then he closed it and followed Craig out. The door clicked shut. Benjamin stood alone. The single bulb above him swayed slightly, casting shadows that rocked back and forth across the metal lockers. His hands were trembling, not from fear, from everything. The exhaustion, the restraint, the sheer weight of being dehumanized day after day by a man who didn't even see him as a person. He sat down on the bench, put his head in his hands, and for the first time in this story, Benjamin Johnson let the silence win. He stayed like that for a long time. But here's what Craig didn't know. Here's what nobody in that building knew. 3 months before Benjamin ever touched a mop at Pinnacle Dynamics, he had submitted a 60-page turnaround proposal to Grayson Capital Holdings, the parent company that owned Pinnacle Dynamics. The proposal was delivered through his mentor, Denise Williams, a corporate attorney with deep connections to Grayson's board. That document identified $90 million in operational waste. It outlined a full cultural restructuring plan. It proposed a new leadership model from the ground up. And it was brilliant. The kind of work that gets passed around boardroom tables and talked about in whispers. Philip Grayson, the 70-year-old CEO of Grayson Capital, read every page personally. And he didn't just read it. He had been quietly watching Pinnacle Dynamics from a distance for months. Watching how the company treated its lowest-paid workers, how leadership behaved when nobody important was looking. Benjamin's experience on the ground confirmed every single problem the proposal described. The board vote was scheduled for next week, and Benjamin? He wasn't just documenting abuse. He was building the most detailed, ground-level audit of corporate dysfunction that any board had ever seen. Written not from a corner office, but from a basement locker room with a single light bulb and a torn notebook. The following Tuesday, something happened on the 62nd floor of a downtown office tower in Washington, D.C., far from Charlotte, far from the basement locker room, far from anything Craig Dawson could see or control. The board of Grayson Capital Holdings convened behind closed doors. 12 people sat around a long oak table. Crystal water glasses, leather folders, the kind of room where billion-dollar decisions were made before lunch. At the head of the table sat Philip Grayson, 70 years old, silver hair, reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose. He had built Grayson Capital from a single investment fund into a holding company that owned 14 subsidiaries across 6 industries. Pinnacle Dynamics was one of them, and right now, it was the one giving him the most trouble. Grayson opened the meeting with 4 words. "We have a problem." He laid a printed copy of Benjamin Johnson's 60-page turnaround proposal on the table, slid it toward the center. Every board member had already received a digital copy 2 weeks prior, but Grayson wanted them to feel the weight of it. This proposal identifies $90 million in operational waste at Pinnacle Dynamics. It outlines a complete restructuring: leadership, culture, financial controls, everything. I've had 3 independent analysts review it. All 3 confirmed the numbers. Henry Wallace, the board chairman, leaned forward. And this was written by, remind me, a man named Benjamin Johnson, MBA from Howard University, top of his class, one of the sharpest strategic minds I've encountered in 40 years of doing this. Wallace nodded slowly. And where is he currently employed? Grayson took off his glasses, set them on the table. He's currently working as a janitor at Pinnacle Dynamics. The room went still. Grayson explained. Benjamin had taken the position intentionally, part of a ground-level research methodology. He wanted to understand the company from the inside, not from quarterly reports or consultant presentations, from the actual floor level, the loading dock, the basement break room. The places where culture isn't performed, it's revealed. And what he found, Grayson continued, confirmed everything in this proposal. Worse, actually. The culture of that company, the way leadership treats its lowest-paid employees, is a liability waiting to explode. He paused, looked around the table. I've watched this situation develop for months. I wanted to see if Pinnacle's current leadership would self-correct. They didn't. They got worse. The man who wrote this proposal has been harassed, humiliated, written up on fabricated charges, and subjected to an illegal locker search, all by one regional manager, with the full knowledge and complicity of a senior VP. Nobody spoke. Wallace adjusted his tie. A board member near the end of the table closed her folder quietly. I'm recommending that we appoint Benjamin Johnson as the new CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics, effective immediately. The discussion lasted 45 minutes. Some board members raised questions: his age, his lack of traditional executive experience, the optics of appointing a sitting janitor to the corner office. Grayson addressed each one calmly. He pointed to the proposal. He pointed to the financial analysis. He pointed to the fact that no current leader at Pinnacle had identified even a fraction of the waste Benjamin had uncovered in 4 months with a mop in his hand. The vote was unanimous, 12-0. Benjamin Johnson was the new CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics. The following Monday morning, a black town car pulled up to the glass tower in uptown Charlotte, 8:55 a.m. The sun reflected off the building's surface in long golden strips. The back door opened. Benjamin stepped out, not in a gray janitor's uniform, not with a mop, not through the loading dock. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie, deliberate, polished shoes that clicked against the sidewalk as he walked toward the front entrance, the same entrance he had never been allowed to use. He pushed through the glass doors into the lobby. The marble floor gleamed under his feet, the same marble he had mopped 100 times. The receptionist looked up, blinked, looked again. "Benjamin? Is that?" He smiled. "Good morning, Claire." Philip Grayson walked beside him. They crossed the lobby together, stepped into the main elevator, the one with the "Authorized Personnel Only" sign. Grayson pressed 40. The doors closed. On the 40th floor, every senior leader at Pinnacle Dynamics was already seated in the boardroom. The same boardroom, the same glass walls, the same table where Craig Dawson had told Benjamin he smelled like bleach and poverty. Craig sat near the middle of the table, Lorraine Hayes beside him. Junior associates lined the edges. Nobody knew why this emergency meeting had been called. The internal email said only, "Mandatory Leadership Assembly, 9 a.m., Boardroom A." The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Philip Grayson entered first. The room straightened. People recognized him immediately. The CEO of the parent company didn't visit often. When he did, it meant something big. Grayson walked to the front of the room, stood behind the podium. "Thank you all for being here. I'll keep this brief. Effective today, Pinnacle Dynamics has new leadership. I'd like to introduce your new Chief Executive Officer." He stepped aside. Benjamin Johnson walked into the room. The air left. Every breath, every whisper, every rustle of paper, gone. Just silence. Pure, electric silence. Craig Dawson's face drained of color. His lips parted. His hand gripped the armrest of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked at Lorraine. She was already staring at the table. Benjamin stood at the podium, looked around the room, took his time. Then he began to speak. Benjamin didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood at that podium, the same spot where Craig had once humiliated him in front of the entire company, and introduced himself. Not as a janitor, not as a victim, as who he had always been. "My name is Benjamin Johnson. I hold a dual MBA in Finance and Corporate Strategy from Howard University. Over the past 4 months, I've worked in this building as a member of the custodial staff. During that time, I conducted a comprehensive ground-level assessment of this company's operations, financial structure, and workplace culture." He paused. Let the words settle. "I learned a great deal. About inefficiencies in your consulting pipeline. About contracts renewed without performance review. About a logistics budget that hasn't been audited in 3 years." Another pause. His eyes moved slowly across the room. "But I also learned something else. I learned how this company treats the people it considers invisible. The ones who clean your floors. The ones who empty your trash at 6 in the morning so your offices are spotless when you arrive at 9. I learned how those people are spoken to, how they're written up on fabricated charges, how they're searched without cause, how they're humiliated in public, while entire rooms full of professionals watch and say nothing." He didn't name Craig, not yet, but every pair of eyes in the room drifted in Craig's direction anyway. "That changes today." Benjamin outlined 3 immediate priorities. First, a complete operational restructuring based on the turnaround proposal approved by Grayson Capital's board. Second, a full, independent culture audit covering every department, every floor, every level of management. Third, a review of all HR complaints filed in the past 2 years, with particular attention to any patterns of discrimination or retaliation. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Benjamin thanked everyone for their time and dismissed the room. People filed out in silence. Some couldn't look at him. Others couldn't stop looking. Craig didn't file out. He sat frozen in his chair until the room was nearly empty. Then he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked straight to Lorraine's office. He shut the door behind him. "This is insane. They put the janitor in charge? The actual janitor? This has to be a stunt, some kind of PR move." Lorraine didn't answer. She was sitting behind her desk, hands flat on a surface, staring at nothing. "Lorraine, are you listening? We need to get ahead of this. I need you to call legal, call the board, call someone." Lorraine finally looked up. "Craig, stop talking." He didn't stop. He went back to his office, closed the door. And then, he did something desperate. He opened his email, started deleting. Messages where he used racially coded language about staff. Messages where he bragged to Lorraine about putting the janitor in his place. Messages where he described the fabricated tip that led to the locker search. He deleted them one by one, dragged them to trash, emptied the trash folder. Then he opened his desk drawer, pulled out the torn notebook pages, the ones he had ripped from Benjamin's journal. He fed them into the shredder beside his desk. The machine whined and chewed through the paper in seconds. Craig exhaled, leaned back in his chair. What Craig didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that none of it mattered. Before the announcement, Benjamin had worked with Grayson Capital's IT security team to implement a full litigation hold on every digital communication within Pinnacle Dynamics. Every email, every message, every deleted file. All of it was backed up, preserved, and flagged. Craig's frantic deletion spree wasn't erasing evidence. It was creating more. Every deletion was logged in real time, time-stamped, recorded. Craig was digging his own grave and calling it cleanup. 2 hours after the all-hands meeting, Benjamin's assistant knocked on the door of the CEO's office, the corner office on the 40th floor, the one with the skyline view. "Mr. Dawson is here to see you, sir." "Send him in." Craig walked in. The confidence was still there, but cracked, like a windshield after a rock hits it, still holding shape but fractured underneath. Benjamin was seated behind the desk. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down, Craig." Craig sat, straightened his tie, tried to smile. "Look, Benjamin, Mr. Johnson, I think there may have been some misunderstandings. I didn't know who you were. If you had known, what? You would have treated me like a human being?" Craig opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "That's the problem, Craig. You should have done that regardless." Benjamin slid a document across the desk. "Effective immediately, you are suspended without pay pending a full investigation into workplace harassment, racial discrimination, retaliation, falsification of company records, and destruction of evidence. Your access badge has been deactivated. Security will escort you out." Craig's face collapsed. "You can't do this. I've been here for 12 years. I have rights." "You do have rights, and they'll be fully respected during the investigation, just like you respected mine." Benjamin pressed the intercom button. "Send in security, please." The door opened, and the man who walked in was Terrence Moore. Same broad shoulders, same calm expression, same security badge, but now carrying the weight of something much bigger than a routine escort. Terrence looked at Craig, then at Benjamin. A small nod passed between them. "Mr. Dawson," Terrence said. "This way, please." Craig stood. His legs were unsteady. He reached for his jacket on the back of the chair, fumbled with it, nearly dropped it. Terrence held the door open and waited. Craig walked out of the CEO's office, down the hallway, past the glass walls of the boardroom, past the desks of people who had laughed at his jokes for years. Nobody looked up. Nobody said goodbye. The elevator doors opened. Craig stepped inside. Terrence pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, and just like that, the man who had told Benjamin Johnson to get out was the one being escorted out of the building. But Craig Dawson getting walked out of the building? That wasn't the end. That was just the first domino. Within 48 hours, Benjamin made a decision that would define his leadership before he even settled into the chair. He commissioned a full, independent investigation, not run by Pinnacle Dynamics' own HR department, not handled by anyone with ties to the old regime. He brought in an external law firm that specialized in workplace discrimination cases, a team of 6 investigators, full access to every email server, every personnel file, every HR complaint logged in the past 5 years. And then Benjamin did something most new CEOs wouldn't have the guts to do. He recused himself from the investigation entirely, publicly, on record. "I have a personal history with this case," he told the board. "If the findings are going to mean anything, to the employees, to the public, to the courts, they can't come from me. They have to come from an independent process that nobody can question." The board agreed. The investigation launched on a Wednesday. By the following Tuesday, the first findings started rolling in. And they were worse than anyone expected. Craig Dawson had filed false performance complaints against 9 employees of color over a 5-year period. 9. Not 1 or 2 isolated incidents. 9 separate people, Black employees, Latino employees, written up for offenses that either never happened or were wildly exaggerated. 6 of those 9 were terminated based on Craig's fabricated documentation. 6 people lost their jobs, lost their income, lost their health insurance. Some of them had families, kids in school, mortgages, and every single one of those write-ups had been co-signed by Lorraine Hayes. Every single one. The investigators recovered Craig's deleted emails from the backup servers. The litigation hold had preserved everything. And what those emails contained was devastating. Private messages between Craig and Lorraine using language that would make your stomach turn. Slurs. Jokes about employees' accents. One email, sent at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, where Craig referred to Benjamin specifically as the charity case with the mop, and said he wanted to make an example out of him before the other ones get ideas. The other ones. That's how he talked about human beings when he thought no one was watching. The fabricated anonymous tip, the one Craig used to justify searching Benjamin's locker, was also traced back to Craig himself. There was no tip, no complaint, no anonymous caller. Craig had created a fake paper trail in the HR system, backdating it to make it look legitimate. The investigators found the metadata. The document was created on Craig's work computer, 45 minutes before the locker search. And then the dam broke from the outside. 2 former Pinnacle Dynamics employees, both Black, both terminated based on Craig's false reports, came forward independently after hearing rumors about the investigation. One of them, a woman who had worked in the accounts department for 3 years, had recorded a conversation with Craig during her termination meeting. She had kept that recording for 3 years. Showed it to a lawyer once. Was told she probably didn't have enough for a case on her own. She put it in a drawer and tried to move on. Now she had context. Now she had corroboration. Now she had 8 other people who had been through the same thing. The story leaked before Pinnacle Dynamics could control the narrative. Sandra Coleman, an investigative journalist at Channel 9 News in Charlotte, received a tip from one of the former employees. She started digging, made calls, filed public records requests. Within a week, she had enough for a full segment. The first broadcast aired on a Thursday evening. The title graphic read, "From Janitor to CEO, the man who exposed a culture of racism at Pinnacle Dynamics." Sandra told the whole story. Benjamin's background, the MBA, the grandmother, the medical debt, the deliberate choice to work from the ground up, the turnaround proposal, the board vote. And then the other side. Craig's campaign of harassment, the fabricated complaints, the illegal search, the destroyed evidence. She interviewed 2 of the former employees on camera, their faces, their names, their voices shaking but steady. One of them said something that Sandra later told her producer was the most powerful line she had ever recorded in 15 years of journalism. The segment ran for 11 minutes. By Friday morning, it had been picked up by national outlets. By Friday evening, the hashtag was trending across every platform. Hashtag #JusticeAtPinnacle. Former employees shared their own stories online. Screenshots of old emails, photos of the basement break room, descriptions of the freight elevator, the loading dock entrance, the flickering fluorescent light. People who had never worked at Pinnacle Dynamics started sharing their own workplace stories. Similar patterns, different companies, same dehumanization. Civil rights organizations issued public statements. 2 members of Congress referenced the story in floor speeches about workplace discrimination reform. A prominent labor attorney appeared on a national morning show and called Pinnacle Dynamics a textbook case of systemic, top-down racial hostility. And here's the part that even Benjamin didn't predict. Grayson Capital's stock price didn't drop. It rose. Investors responded to the decisive leadership change. Analysts praised the transparency. One investment firm upgraded their rating on Grayson Capital specifically because of, not despite, the public accountability. The market rewarded the truth. That almost never happens. But it happened here. The legal consequences followed swiftly. Craig Dawson was formally terminated for cause: racial discrimination, workplace harassment, retaliation, falsification of company records, and destruction of evidence. He was referred to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. 3 of the 6 wrongfully terminated employees filed a joint civil lawsuit against both Craig personally and Pinnacle Dynamics as an institution. Lorraine Hayes was terminated the same week. Complicity, failure to report, co-signing fraudulent documentation. She was barred from holding any supervisory role at any Grayson Capital subsidiary, permanently. The HR representative who had processed Craig's fabricated write-up against Benjamin was reassigned and required to complete a full retraining program. The entire HR department was restructured under new leadership, and the 6 employees who lost their jobs because of Craig's lies? Every single one received a formal written apology from Pinnacle Dynamics. Back pay, full benefits restoration, and an open invitation to return to the company if they chose to. 3 of them accepted. 6 months later, the civil case went to trial. Craig Dawson sat at the defendant's table in a Charlotte courtroom. No expensive suit this time, no slicked back hair. He looked 10 years older than he had the day he told Benjamin to get out of the boardroom. The jury found Craig liable for workplace discrimination and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages awarded? $2.8 million. Split among the 3 plaintiffs. Craig's attorney filed a countersuit for wrongful termination. It was dismissed in 14 days. Benjamin was called as a witness, not as a plaintiff, as a witness. He sat in the chair, answered every question calmly, factually, without emotion. The opposing attorney tried to rattle him. "Mr. Johnson, isn't it true that you deliberately infiltrated Pinnacle Dynamics under false pretenses?" Benjamin's response was simple. "I applied for a job. I was hired. I did that job every single day. There's nothing false about that. The attorney pressed harder. But you had an ulterior motive. I had a purpose. I wanted to understand this company from the ground up. What I found was a system that protected abusers and punished the people they abused. I documented it. I reported it. And I fixed it. The courtroom was silent. The judge later issued a consent decree requiring Pinnacle Dynamics to implement company-wide anti-discrimination training, an anonymous reporting hotline, and quarterly culture audits for the next 5 years. Independent oversight. No exceptions. Justice didn't just arrive. It arrived with a paper trail, a court order, and a camera crew. 1 year later, Pinnacle Dynamics was a different company. Not just on paper. In the hallways, in the break rooms, in the elevator conversations that used to never happen. Revenue was up 22%. Employee satisfaction scores had doubled. Turnover in the support staff, the janitors, the maintenance crew, the security team, dropped to the lowest rate in company history. A national business magazine featured Pinnacle Dynamics on its cover with a simple headline: Most Improved Corporate Culture in America. But the changes that mattered most weren't in the numbers. The Authorized Personnel Only sign next to the executive elevator? Gone. Removed on Benjamin's first day as CEO. Every employee, from the corner office to the cleaning crew, used the same entrance, the same elevators, the same break rooms. The basement break room still existed, but it had been renovated. New paint, new furniture. A window cut into the wall that let natural light pour in for the first time in a decade. Someone even fixed the vending machine. On a Tuesday morning in October, Benjamin walked through the 36th floor on his way to a meeting. He was adjusting his cuffs when he noticed a young man in a gray janitorial uniform mopping near the stairwell. Early 20s, headphones around his neck. Moving fast, trying to finish before the office traffic picked up. Benjamin stopped. "Hey, what's your name?" The kid looked up, startled. Probably wasn't used to anyone on this floor talking to him. DeAndre, sir." "DeAndre? You in school?" "Yes, sir. Community college. Business administration. Night classes." Benjamin reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a business card, held it out. "If you ever need anything, a reference, advice, someone to look over your resume, you call that number." DeAndre looked at the card, then at Benjamin. His eyes went wide. "Wait, you're the CEO? Like, the actual CEO?" Benjamin smiled. "I used to have your job, DeAndre. Cleaned this exact floor. Pushed the same cart you're pushing right now. And I'm telling you, what you're learning down here, in these hallways, before anybody else shows up, it's going to teach you more than any boardroom ever will." DeAndre stared at the card for a long moment. Then he looked up and grinned. "Thank you, sir. For real." Benjamin nodded, kept walking. The meeting could wait another 30 seconds. Terrence Moore didn't push a cleaning cart anymore either. He had been promoted to head of building operations, overseeing security, facilities, and maintenance for the entire tower. He ran a mentorship program for support staff funded directly by the company. Every quarter, he sat down with new hires, janitors, security guards, dock workers, and told them the same thing. You belong here. Don't let anyone tell you different. And if someone tries, you come find me. One afternoon, Terrence stood in front of the bathroom mirror in his new office on the 15th floor. He pinned his updated name badge to his shirt, looked at it, read it twice, allowed himself a slow, quiet smile. 11 years in this building. 11 years of watching and saying nothing. He was done being silent. And Craig Dawson? He lost the house in the divorce that came 6 months after the trial. His wife didn't leave because of the money. She left because of who the money revealed him to be. He moved 2 states away, took a job as a mid-level sales associate at a small industrial supply firm. Nobody there knew his history. He kept his head down, showed up on time, didn't talk much. Whether Craig Dawson actually changed or just learned to hide better, that's not for us to decide. Justice was served. Redemption is his problem. So here's my question, and I really want to hear your answer. Have you ever been treated like you were invisible? At work, at school, in a store, anywhere? Or have you ever watched it happen to someone else and stayed quiet? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and remember this: no title, no uniform, no badge should ever determine whether someone gets treated with basic human dignity. The janitor and the CEO breathe the same air, walk the same floors, deserve the same respect. Don't let anyone tell you what room you belong in. I'll see you in the next one.